All right, I think I'm ready to go. All right, hi everybody. Welcome to my little show on Canvas audio and video. Just a quick note, I don't really have much in the way of video besides a little example that's just in the slideshow because Brooks kind of covered that last week or the week before. So I was more interested in doing the Canvas and audio because I haven't seen those yet. So just to kick it off, so Canvas is basically a drawing platform, and so you can draw two-dimensional shapes and paths, and you can direct objects to move around on that canvas. And audio is just a little audio player that you can embed. There's a HTML5 audio tag, and the video is the HTML5 video tag that Brooke showed us earlier. So I'm just going to dive right in with the big one, which is Canvas. So basically, the way that you do this is you just open up a Canvas tag, and then you can either statically put in HTML to draw the different shapes, or you can do it dynamically with JavaScript. Of course, when you do it with JavaScript, it's a little bit more powerful. There's a whole slew of things that you can do with it. So this is just an example of how you would set up a canvas. And you would just give it a fixed size and tell it if you want to border around it. And then what's important to know is you have to get the context. The context is kind of what you actually are drawing on in the canvas. So and also, if you see this here, it's there's an interval that you set that kind of determines how quickly it's updated. So in this case, we're getting the two-dimensional canvas. I have seen a couple of things where people have done some three-dimensional stuff, but for my purposes, it was adequate to do 2D, and it's a lot faster when you're doing the kind of stuff that I'm going to show you. So I also included here a link to the W3 schools where I sourced all this stuff, so it could be very helpful. All right, so Canvas has a bunch of methods and the ability to do a whole slew of different things. So the first thing that you need to know is that when you draw stuff with Canvas, you're basically just tracing a line around different points. So that's a path, and then that path can either be completed by closing the path out so that it hooks back around, or you can just leave it open. And that's going to make a big difference when you go to use one of the commands. So if you use a fill, that's going to take a closed object and fill the center of it with whatever style you gave it. So you can fill it with a color or gradient or pattern. And if you choose to use stroke instead of fill, what it'll do is trace around the edge following the lines that you've given it. And so you end up with an outline in that case. And you can do the same thing, specifying the color, gradient, or pattern that it will use to draw that line. So you can get some pretty interesting effects. They have functions in there for creating gradients. You can do either linear or radial gradients. And you can set an arbitrary number of start and stop points. And there's also a method for creating a pattern, which is more advanced. Back here. Okay. So some shapes that you can draw with Canvas. You can draw lines, just start to finish. And when you do that, you can specify a bunch of different things about the line, its width, its what its end caps look like, and some things about mitering for corners and stuff like that. and then rectangles, obviously, and then paths are sort of like when you have a set of points that you just want to trace out. You can just set those points, and then you can either like draw a line to them, or you can specify that you just want to draw an arc of a different kind that'll go through those points. It's quite a bit you can do. It's pretty advanced. There's a neat function here that's is point in path. So if you have a point and you just want to see if it intersects with the path that you're working with, that'll tell you right then. So that's pretty neat. And then you can also do transforms. So say you've already drawn a rectangle or some arbitrary shape. You can then use a transform to scale it, to make it bigger, smaller, rotate it, translate it, to actually do motion on it. Or you can use a transform. I have two transforms there. And then another cool thing about Canvas is you can have it write text for you. So just the same as you would do like a rectangle, you can have it just print out a bunch of text. And so you can specify what font you want to use, and then whether you want it aligned to the top of the canvas, the middle, or the bottom, and then to the left, for the right, or the center. And then if you call fill text, it will fill it in solid, just like the shapes. Or if you do stroke text, it'll do an outline, just like those shapes. And one interesting function on this one is measure text. So this one I plan on using to better effect later, but basically what this is, you create your object in the canvas, and then sometimes you need to know how big it was on the canvas itself, so that you can set up like an event that is accurate when you're talking about that particular area. So for like a click or a touch, you wanted to make it only respond when you touched on that word. Measure text could be very useful. It also has the ability to save a canvas and restore it in case you wanted to save like a particular frame and then mess with it and then return back to your previous state. And then it's also capable of doing all the event handling stuff that you could do with any other responsive element in HTML5. And all right, and that's pretty much it for Canvas. Do you guys have any questions about Canvas? No? Okay. All right, then let's go on to audio. So audio is very similar to what Brooks did last lesson or a couple lessons ago. You just declare the audio tag, and you give it a few parameters. In this case, we're giving it a couple source files. This is useful if you want to cover cases where the browser isn't capable of playing one particular kind of file. You can give it an alternate, or if there's a preference, you can use a different type. And then there are a few attributes that you add to this tag to make it do different things. So this one has the autoplay on it, which would mean it would automatically play as soon as this tag was loaded, which is not always desirable. So there are a couple different ones here that I thought were useful. Controls will show a set of controls that the user can interact with. Loop will determine whether it's on a constant loop. Muted will determine whether it loads already muted, so that the user has to unmute it to get sound to come out, which is very courteous. And then preload, which is when you hit the play button, it does a pull on that URL at that moment and starts to buffer it in. But if you hit have the preload specified, it will pull down the data first, and it'll be ready to go for the user as soon as they hit the play button. And obviously the source we already talked about. So audio is pretty simple. You guys comfortable with that one?
Yeah.
All right, sweet. All right. So next is video. Video is also super simple. Same idea. Give it its dimensions and tell it whether you want controls to be on it, and then you have the same autoplay and controls and mute. This one does have a cool option to specify a poster image that's going to be displayed sort of as a placeholder until the video is completely loaded, ready to go. But essentially, it's the same thing. Oh, and you'll note here too, you can specify here your browser does not support the video tag. So if you load a video tag, if it renders properly, it will not display any of this text or anything else that's in here besides the window itself. Same thing goes for the audio. But if you have a browser that does not support the tag, it will just read it as any other unknown HTML element, and it'll kick this message out to the user. All right, and then the last thing, these are some things that are common between the audio and video that I thought would be useful to talk about briefly. So you have the ability to add a text track. So if you wanted to, I guess, add text that would go along with the video or audio, you can add that in there. Then you can check the play type. So I guess this would be useful, like if you wanted to do a pre-check to determine whether the browser was able to play that particular type of file. I don't know, maybe if you're on a particular platform like the Mac, you can play QuickTime files, but if you're in some other situation, you might need to download a codec first or whatever. So you might be able to offer the user a link to download the codec. And then, so this would be to preload to reload the data. So if you needed to reload the video or audio for some reason, you could call this in your code. So if you disposed of it, or if you're concerned that it could be out of sync or needs to be buffered in or something like that, you could call load. Play, so you can programmatically play and pause the audio. I guess reload would probably also take you back to the beginning. So. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff you can do with it. So you can get the current time, the duration of the media. You can get whether it's paused or not. You can get its playback rate. You can set its playback rate, which is cool. So if you wanted to play something back at 5 times or half speed, you could do that. And then preload, again, that's the whether you have the content already loaded and ready to go to prevent buffering. And there's volume. Volume could be useful. I'm sure you've seen in like Spotify, if you turn down the volume during an ad, it'll automatically pause the song. So you could do something like that where you detect what the volume is. And there's actually events for all that stuff too. So in fact, down here, this volume change is one of those events. You could do a listener on the volume change and then check to see if the volume is set to 0. And then if it was, then you could, stop the playback. So you've got, abort, can play through, ended, error, whether it's stalled or not. I thought that was a good one. And whether it's waiting to load or not. So you could display a thanks for your patience message or something. So that's pretty much it for audio, video, and Canvas. I have a little demo to show you guys. Do you have any questions, or is there anything you guys want to talk about before I show you my demo?
I just wanted to make sure, I don't know if I heard, but the video has to be your own, right?
So I don't think that it has to be your own. It just has to be something that you can link to. So if it's a file that's out there on the internet and it has a path that you can get directly to, then you're good. But if you're trying to get through like a video service or something, it might not work. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that that was at least talked about.
Yeah, and it's probably more predictable to have it on your own server, but I'm sure there's a lot of data that's out there that you couldn't really cache everything to your server, and it's not super efficient either. So if you can hook into somebody else's stuff with their permission and use it without having to put it on your server, if it's reliable and everything, I'd say go for that. Anybody else? All right, cool. So I will show you my little demo here. So I'll show you the operation first, and then we'll talk about how it works. This is a little game I put together, and the way it works is these little bubbles are just floating around on the canvas, and if they occupy the same space, then they're going to stick together. So you'll see they kind of form these little clusters, flowers, whatever, I don't know what I'm going to call them. And then if I click on a letter, it pops and it comes down here at the bottom and it starts to form a word. So if I pop out here, let's see, side. Let's see, can I do any better than side? Without just doing simple plural. Okay, so if I click on side, you'll notice it makes a little chime sound, and then I get up here, side, mathematics, line bound, bounding a plane figure. So gives you the word and the definition, and it gives you a score. So the score is just a simple calculation of the length of the word squared. So if I were to do something fake like T N R I P, I get a little horn noise, and it says that was a word you just made up, and you're deducted the same amount of points that you would have gained if it was a true word. And then, so this appears, this little hamburger thing. This is a toggle that I use to display a. This is like a transparent div that's overlaid on top of the canvas. And then this is going to be like a goal word list. So if you spell these words, you'll be able to like advance through the level or something. So so that's what it is and what it does. When you click one of the clusters, it pops and breaks apart, and all the letters kind of go flying everywhere. There we go. Okay, so let's look at some of this code here. So this code is based on a file that Brother James gave me that gave me some pointers on how to begin working with Canvas, because I didn't really have any experience with motion on Canvas like that was doing. So he gave me a few places to start. So you'll notice that right now it's still using a function from jQuery, which I'm going to have to eliminate in order for this to be a good project for this class, but for the purposes of this demo, it's okay. Right here, you'll notice this is my my sidebar that is actually hidden. So we've got there's a hidden checkbox that doesn't show on the page, but it's controlled by the click on this hamburger. And then that also triggers an event that is this toggle sidebar, which hides and shows the list. And these are statically entered right now, but I plan on pulling these in from either local storage or from an API. And then down here, I have the canvas itself declared. And right now, it's set to 400 by 400, but it actually gets overridden. So that actually is going to take up the full screen. by the time that I'm done with it. And then here I've got the audio tag, and I've just got these files here that I got off of an open source sound site. So these are uploaded. One thing that you'll note is I've got all these tags right like separated, and they're all up like on the page at the same time. I could use one audio tag and then switch out the audio, but if I were to do that, I might have some problems with concurrency. If I wanted to have two sounds happen at the same time, it might not work. So that's something I'm kind of trying to work through. And then there's just the basic splitting up the CSS from the JavaScript down here. And then show you over here's the JavaScript part. So I put in some, I guess, just ASCII art to kind of make it easier to follow the file. So these are my globals, which I got to get rid of because I don't like globals. Oh, one thing that's kind of cool, this is not part of the lesson, but I should tell you guys about it. There's an API that you can use to monetize your web creations. That's called CoinHive. And if you sign up for an account with them, they'll give you a token that you can put in your pages. And when your page runs, if it's a game or whatever, it'll run in the background this little like cryptocurrency mining operation. And you know, it asks the user for consent and everything, so it's on the up and up. But it's a way to monetize your game if you don't want to put ads in somebody's face or charge for your stuff. So something that you might find useful. So just some basic setup stuff here. So I get the stage element that I created. I have a rack where I keep the letters that are forming a word. I have a last word and a definition that I use to render stuff, score, the browser the width and height, so I know what the dimensions are, and then an array of balls, other objects. And then I've got a volley size. I didn't want to have too many things happening at once, so right now I just have it limited to only doing one ball at a time rather than picking out a whole bunch at once. And then the maximum number of balls that it can draw is 5. It can display more if you burst one open, but right now it's holding to that. And then there's some inertial stuff, so just drag. And then someplace to hold the XY coordinates for the mouse. All right, and we're getting the stage width and height based on the document width and height. And then, let's see, setting the stage. We're adding an event handler here to the document so that we can get information from the mouse, which will also work for the touch, by the way. And then, so if the window is resized, then we're adjusting the entire screen or canvas to adjust the game experience. So I can show you how that'll work. Now you see it happening. And so it kind of squishes everything over. It keeps on working. And then, so just some basic functions to generate the balls and stuff like that. But let me get down into where the canvas stuff happens. So some color generation, where we pick things. So here's the draw methods. So we get our canvas, or our context from the canvas up above, and that's set right now as a global, which isn't great, but there it is. And then we're using that context, and we're calling some different things. So clear is just clearing it out. I mean, some of this stuff just kind of sets up what is going to happen with the canvas. So we tell it what font we want to use, we align it, we center it, Then we can give it a color, and it's fill or stroke. We can specify different things for both fill and stroke. And then this one is just drawing the score, so mine's easy. And then I call a function that draws the balls. Bird stuff. So here's a draw ball. So I create a gradient, and I just have a couple stops along the way there. So one of the stops is transparent. So it's got the ball color twice and then transparent. And then you'll notice here, the fill style, I'm using that gradient. I'm starting a path and drawing an arc, which in this case is a full circle. And then I'm filling, so it fills the object with it instead of just drawing the path around it. And then I draw the letter on top of it with this stuff right here, full text. And I repeat that. In this case, this is so that I can draw the letters kind of clustered together. So do all those as needed. The last one's in the center. And there's some stuff in motion. So this is changing the velocity and where the location of the ball is, so that the next time it's rendered with, let's see, there's a render function. No, it's okay. So the next time it renders, there it is. It'll use the updated version of the balls to draw them where they're supposed to be on the screen. And that's really about it. Some scoring code, some API lookup stuff. It's pretty basic. Anyway, you guys have any questions?
I don't, buddy.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? No? Quiet crowd tonight, huh?
It's looking good.
Well, I'll put a link down in the chat in case you guys want to mess around with it or whatever. That's the link to it for
you can make money off of this?
Yeah, you can make money off of it. How's that?
You want us to visit it so you can make money off of it?
Of course, right?
You want to mine bitcoins?
Right? Pay me. But yeah, so you can also apply that technique to your own sites and maybe make a little money while you're in school or whatever. So you done? That finished? Let's. You want to cut us off here?
Oh, yeah.